Welcome back. While researching murders and mysteries that have occurred within a 3-hour radius of my hometown in Port Pirie, South Australia, I came across this little gem. While it isn't the details of this murder that make it stand out, it's the coincidence in some of the surnames that, at first, had me thinking someone was pulling my leg. But I assure you, this is a real case of murder, and as such, I will do my very best to get through it with the seriousness it deserves. Well, I'll try. Like many emigrants, Tommy Ah Fook had come from China to the new country of Australia, looking for a better life, and settled in South Australia. He first worked as a cook on a Murray River steamer boat, commanded by a Captain Johnson. Having amassed a small sum of money, he laid out his savings in a stock of goods, which he peddled through the region, making frequent visits to Adelaide to replenish his baskets. It was upon one of these trips that he met and married an Englishwoman named Elizabeth Annie. After abandoning his work as a hawker and peddler, Ah Fook took service as cook at Bullman's Family Hotel in Glenelg, where he remained for 18 months. He was described by his employers as having been a thoroughly honest and trustworthy servant. He was good-tempered and inoffensive in manner. He gave up this position to open a cafe in Hindley Street, in Adelaide's central business district. His marriage was not a happy one, and frequent quarrels ensued between the ill-matched pair. It has been stated that once the wife attempted to stab her husband, and the woman swore that Ah Fook had one occasion held a knife to her throat. Eventually they separated, and although the wife occasionally visited his place of business, they had not been living together. In the early hours one August morning in 1883, 3 men were cleaning out a cesspit at the rear of the City Hotel in Hindley Street. Now, for those of you unsure what a cesspit is, in 1883 it would have simply been a pit that is covered, where faeces, urine and other refuse was dumped. Men, known as nightmen, because they only carried out their work during the night, would empty the pit by shovel and a bucket, loading it into their horse-drawn wagon to be carted away. They were surprised to find the body of a man in the pit. On closer inspection, the body was seen to be that of a Chinese male. One of the workmen left the rear yard and ran to King William Street, where he met a patrolling constable. The constable went to the rear yard and examined the body. He and the workman then removed the body from the pit. Dr. Clindening, a city doctor, was sent for. On his arrival, he identified the body as being Tommy Ah Fook, a Hindley Street cafe owner. Tommy's head had been bashed in, and further inspection of the body revealed he'd been shot. Tommy had been missing for a week. Detective Barchell went to Tommy's Hindley Street cafe, where he questioned the 3 occupants, 2 Chinese men, Wei Young and Mah Poo, and a European sailor named William Coop. All 3 were arrested on suspicion. On August 15th, the city coroner, Mr. T. Ward, opened an inquest at the Destitute Asylum into the death of Tommy Ah Fook. Various witnesses told the inquest that Tommy was married to an English girl but had been separated for some time and was now living at the cafe along with the 3 men who were in custody. One witness, Yu Ting Li, I'm telling you, I cannot make this stuff up. One witness, Yu Ting Li, told the inquest that during the week that Tommy was missing, he had seen Mah Poo wearing a gold pin belonging to Tommy. William Coop said he was a sailor and in between ships was working at Tommy's cafe. Mah Poo was a cook, and Wei Young helped with the chores. All 3 lived and worked at the cafe. Yu Ting Li had asked Mah Poo the previous week where Tommy was. Poo replied that Tommy had gone away and he did not know where. Wei Young stated that one morning during the previous week, Poo had woken him, telling him to get up as he could not find Tommy, and he told him to open the shop. Poo came into the cafe dressed in a suit. He seemed to have taken Tommy's place, acting the part of the manager. The inquest was told that prior to his disappearance, Tommy and Poo had had an argument. Tommy told Poo that he was no good, and Poo replied that he would pack up and go to Sydney. Further inquiries revealed that Poo had bought a revolver, and later that week he had opened a bank account in the name of J. Bing. The revolver was found in Light Square, lying in the grass by two boys. Police traced it back to Poo. At the conclusion of the inquiry, the jury returned a verdict that Poo had to answer to a charge of murder. Mah Poo, William Coop and Wei Young were committed for trial. At the first sitting, no evidence was found to connect Coop and Young to the death of Tommy Ah Fook, and they were discharged. Mah Poo's trial began in October. Charged with murder, he pleaded not guilty. The Crown Solicitor, Mr Mann, and Mr Harold Downer prosecuted for the Crown. Mr Pater and Mr Whittle appeared for Poo. Mr Mann opened the case telling the jury where the body had been found and the events before and after. The whole case was circumstantial, but a strong one. Poo had been seen carrying a bundle of clothes from the shop, and what appeared to be bloodstains was seen on a shirt sleeve and on Poo's hat. The bank account opened by Poo in another name and Poo buying a gun. The gun, which had been found in Light Square after the body of Tommy had been found, was traced back to Poo, who had bought it from a Hindley Street pawnbroker prior to the murder. Whilst the trial was underway, it was found that one of the jurors was deranged. So the jury was discharged and a new jury sworn in. The trial began again. Tommy's Cafe was reputed to take in about £20 a week. Poo had opened a bank account in a false name after Tommy's disappearance. Poo had been seen wearing Tommy's gold pin. The revolver found was tested by a chemist who stated that there were likely bloodstains mixed with rust on the revolver. It was stated that prior to the body being found, Poo told Tommy's wife, who lived away from the cafe, that Tommy owed him £13 in wages. Poo had a warrant issued against Tommy for the amount. Mr Whittle, the defence counsel, told the jury that it was possible that Poo opened the bank account in the name of Bing and deposited his saved earnings in it so his fellow countrymen would not ask for any of it. Mr Whittle also pointed out that alongside the cafe was a shooting gallery. It was possible that a stray shot had hit Tommy as he was about to enter the water closet and fell, hitting his head and falling into the cesspit. The police examined the shooting gallery and advised that a stray shot could not have come from the gallery. Mr Whittle pointed out that on the first morning of Tommy's absence, Poo had assumed the running of the cafe as Tommy could not be found and someone had to tend to the business. Tommy, on the night before his absence, was seen in the company of a woman. If she were found, she might be able to relate information on Tommy's movements that night. And as for Poo being seen wearing Tommy's gold pin, it could have innocently been borrowed. The judge summed up the trial, which had been running for several days, telling the jury they must calmly examine all the facts and circumstances. The jurors returned just 12 minutes later. The verdict: Poo was guilty of murder. Having nothing to say, Poo was sentenced to death by hanging and removed to the Adelaide jail. Mah Poo waited out his execution date at Adelaide Jail in the condemned cell. At first he would not eat. He was visited constantly by the city missionary, Mr. Berry. At one stage he lay on his bed and told the keeper, Mr. Howell, that he would not walk. Howell told him they would carry him to the gallows. Mah Poo jumped up and said, "No, me can walk." The day before his execution, he wrote a confession admitting to killing Tommy and that he'd acted alone. Tommy was always threatening him, he said, and was never satisfied with his work. Poo asked permission to wear his suit on the morning of his execution, and the request was granted. At 8 a.m. on his final morning, he emerged from his cell and his leg irons were removed. Then, accompanied by officials, he walked the 400 yards to the gallows that had been erected the night before. Poo ascended the steps accompanied by Mr. Berry and Mr. Manson from the city mission. Prayers were recited, the executioner made his arrangements, the lever was pulled, and Mah Poo's body dropped 3 feet 6 inches. After hanging for 1 hour, the body was removed. Mah Poo's body was later buried in the Northern Lane area of the jail. His initials and the date of execution were marked on the wall. Mah Poo was the last person to be executed on the portable scaffold. A gallows in the cell on the southern side of the jail was used from 1894 until 1950. In 1953, one of the watchtowers was converted to hold the gallows and used until 1964. So, there we have it. The story of Ah Fook, killed by Mah Poo and found in the cesspit. I managed to make it through with some decorum, and I hope you enjoyed the story. Please help me in the YouTube world by clicking the like before you go, and subscribe if you'd like to hear more murder, mystery and mayhem. Bye for now.